The thunder crashed overhead like the wrath of an angry god as Delilah Richardson stumbled through the muddy streets of Trinidad, Colorado, her worn shoes squelching with every desperate step. Rain pelted her face so hard it felt like tiny needles piercing her skin, and her threadbare dress clung to her shivering body as she searched for any sign of sanctuary in this unfamiliar town. She had been traveling for 3 weeks since fleeing St. Louis, running from a marriage arrangement her father had made to a cruel man twice her age. And now in this October storm of 1878, she feared she might collapse before finding shelter. Through the downpour, she could barely make out the scattered buildings lining the muddy thoroughfare. Most windows were dark, their occupants already settled in for the night. Her legs trembled with exhaustion, and her lungs burned with each gasping breath. The cold had seeped so deep into her bones that she could no longer feel her fingers. She had to find help soon, or the elements would claim her. A dim light flickered in the window of a modest cabin at the edge of town, separated from the other structures by a stretch of open land. It looked well maintained despite its simplicity, with a small barn attached and a corral that held several horses huddled against the storm. Delilah staggered toward it, nearly falling twice in the mud before reaching the wooden steps of the front porch. She raised her trembling fist and knocked on the door, the sound barely audible over the roar of the storm. When no one answered immediately, panic seized her chest. She knocked again, harder this time, her knuckles scraping against the rough wood. "Please," she called out, her voice hoarse and weak. "Please, someone help me." Inside the cabin, Isaac Keller had been cleaning his rifle by the fire when the first knock came. He paused, listening intently. Out here, unexpected visitors after dark could mean trouble. The second, more desperate knock made him set the rifle aside and move cautiously toward the door. When he heard the woman's voice, thin and desperate, he quickly unlatched the lock and pulled it open. The sight that met him stole the breath from his lungs. A young woman stood on his porch, drenched to the bone, her dark hair plastered to her face and shoulders. But it was her eyes that struck him like a lightning bolt to the chest, even filled with exhaustion and fear. They held a depth and beauty that seemed to reach right through him. They were the color of rich earth after rain, brown with flecks of gold that caught the light from his cabin. In that single moment, as water dripped from her trembling form and those eyes met his, something shifted in Isaac's chest, as though his heart had been waiting his entire 26 years for this precise instant. "Help me," she whispered, and then her knees buckled. Isaac lunged forward, catching her before she hit the porch boards. She was light in his arms, too light and cold as river stone. He kicked the door wider and carried her inside, shouldering it shut against the wind. His mind raced as he brought her close to the fire. Her breathing was shallow, and her skin held a dangerous pallor beneath the dirt and rain. "Stay with me," he said, laying her gently on the braided rug before the hearth. He grabbed blankets from his bed, wrapping them around her soaked form. Her eyes fluttered open briefly, focusing on his face with a mixture of gratitude and confusion before closing again. Isaac worked quickly, stoking the fire until it blazed hot and bright. He knew he needed to get her out of those wet clothes or she would catch her death. His face flushed at the impropriety of the situation, but survival trumped social niceties. He fetched one of his clean shirts from the trunk at the foot of his bed and returned to her side. "Miss, can you hear me? I need to help you out of these wet things. You will freeze otherwise." When she did not respond, he made a decision. Moving with as much respect as possible, he worked the soaked dress from her body, keeping his eyes averted except when necessary, and replaced it with his shirt, which hung like a tent on her small frame. He wrapped her again in the dry blankets and rubbed her arms and hands vigorously, trying to return circulation to her limbs. After several minutes, color began to return to her cheeks, and her breathing steadied. Isaac sat back on his heels, studying her face in the firelight. She was beautiful, even bedraggled and unconscious. High cheekbones, full lips, and those remarkable eyes that had seared themselves into his memory. He guessed she was young, perhaps 20 or 21. What was she doing alone in a storm, so far from shelter? He heated water over the fire and made strong tea, setting it aside for when she woke. Then he simply waited, keeping vigil as the storm raged outside. Every few minutes, he would check her pulse at her wrist, reassuring himself that it remained steady and strong. Nearly an hour passed before her eyelids fluttered and opened. Confusion clouded her face as she took in the unfamiliar surroundings. Then her gaze found Isaac sitting a respectful distance away, and memory seemed to flood back. She tried to sit up, clutching the blankets to her chest. "Easy now," Isaac said softly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "You collapsed on my porch. I brought you in from the storm. You are safe here." Delilah stared at him, her heart pounding. The man before her had dark hair that curled slightly at the ends, strong features weathered by sun and wind, and eyes the color of a summer sky. There was kindness in those eyes and concern, but also something else that made her breath catch an intensity that suggested he was seeing her, truly seeing her in a way no one ever had before. "Where am I?" she managed to ask, her voice scratchy. "Trinidad, Colorado. My cabin, just outside town." "I am Isaac Keller." He reached for the cup of tea and held it out to her. "Drink this. It will help warm you from the inside." She accepted the cup with trembling hands, and he noticed her wince as the hot ceramic touched her cold fingers. Without thinking, he moved closer and wrapped his larger hands around hers, helping her hold the cup steady and sharing his warmth. The touch sent a jolt through both of them, and their eyes met again over the rim of the cup. "Thank you," she whispered. "I thought I was going to die out there." "What is your name? What brought you out in such weather?" She hesitated, then seemed to decide that this man who had saved her life deserved the truth. "Delilah Richardson. I was traveling from St. Louis trying to reach California. My stagecoach broke an axle about 5 miles back. The driver and other passengers decided to wait with the coach for morning, but I saw the storm coming and thought I could make it to town. I should have stayed." Isaac felt anger rise in his chest. "They let you walk off alone," I insisted. She took a sip of the tea, and warmth began to spread through her chest. "They tried to convince me otherwise, but I can be stubborn." "Why California?" He did not know why he asked, only that he suddenly needed to know everything about this woman. Delilah looked into the fire, shadows dancing across her face. "I am running from an arranged marriage. My father made a deal with a man named Gerald Thornton, a wealthy businessman in St. Louis. 50 years old, twice widowed with a reputation for cruelty. I could not go through with it, so I took what money I had saved and left in the night. 'Does anyone know where you have gone?' I told my younger sister, but no one else. She will keep my secret." Delilah's eyes suddenly widened. "My bag. I had a bag with all my possessions." "There was nothing on the porch when I found you. The storm might have blown it away, or you might have dropped it before you reached the cabin." Despair washed over her face. "Everything I owned was in that bag. My money, my mother's locket, extra clothes." Isaac reached out instinctively and touched her shoulder through the blanket. "We will look for it when the storm passes. If it is out there, we will find it." The simple gesture of comfort and the conviction in his voice calmed something in Delilah's chest. She studied him more carefully now, taking in the details of his face and form. He was tall and lean with the muscled build of a man who worked with his hands. His shirt was clean but worn, his trousers patched at one knee. The cabin around them was neat and orderly, sparse but comfortable. Everything spoke of a man who lived simply but with pride. "You are very kind," she said. "Most men would not have taken in a strange woman. Most men are fools, then." The words came out more forcefully than Isaac intended, and he felt heat rise to his face. "I mean, it is the right thing to do. No one should be turned away in a storm." Delilah smiled for the first time, and Isaac felt his heart skip. Even exhausted and in borrowed clothes, she was radiant. "Still, I am grateful. I will leave as soon as the weather clears and I can arrange for passage. I do not want to impose on your hospitality." "You will do no such thing." Isaac's tone brooked no argument. "You are in no condition to travel. You will stay here until you are fully recovered and we have found your belongings. I have a spare room where you can sleep properly. Tomorrow we can sort out the rest. I could not possibly stay in your home. The impropriety can hang for all I care. Your safety is more important than small-town gossip." He stood and extended his hand to help her up. "Can you walk?" Delilah set aside the tea and let him pull her to her feet. Her legs wobbled but held. She was acutely aware of his hand still holding hers, warm and calloused and somehow perfect. When had she ever felt such an immediate connection to another person? It defied logic, yet the feeling persisted. Isaac led her to a small room at the back of the cabin. It held a narrow bed with a thick quilt, a washstand, and a wooden chair. "It is not much, but the mattress is good and the quilt was made by my mother before she passed. It will keep you warm." "It is wonderful," Delilah said honestly. After weeks of poor accommodations and the prospect of freezing to death, this simple room looked like paradise. "I will be just in the main room if you need anything. Do not hesitate to call out." Isaac reluctantly released her hand and stepped back. "Sleep well, Delilah Richardson." "Sleep well, Isaac Keller." She watched him close the door softly behind him, then sank onto the bed with a sigh. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her mind spun with questions. Who was this cowboy who had taken her in without hesitation? Why did his presence make her feel both safe and unsettled? And why could she still feel the warmth of his hand on hers in the main room? Isaac stood by the fire, staring into the flames but seeing only those earth-colored eyes. He had lived alone for 3 years since his parents died, content with his horses and the occasional trip to town for supplies and company. He had courted a woman once, 2 years back, but it had ended badly when she decided ranch life was too isolated for her tastes. Since then, he had convinced himself he was better off alone now, with Delilah Richardson sleeping in his spare room. That conviction crumbled like dried earth. He had fallen hard the moment she looked at him, and the feeling only intensified the more time he spent in her presence. It was madness. He knew nothing about her beyond her name and her circumstances. Yet something deep in his soul recognized her, as though they had been searching for each other across time and distance. He shook his head and banked the fire for the night. Tomorrow would bring clarity. Tomorrow he would help her find her belongings and make arrangements for her journey. Tomorrow he would be sensible and practical. Tonight, he would simply be grateful she was alive and under his roof. But sleep was long in coming, and when it finally arrived, his dreams were filled with dark eyes and a smile that promised forever. Morning came with clear skies and the fresh, washed smell of the earth after rain. Isaac woke early, as was his habit, and started the stove to make coffee and breakfast. He was frying bacon and eggs when Delilah emerged from the back room, still wearing his shirt, her dark hair loose and tangled around her shoulders. She looked impossibly young and vulnerable in the morning light streaming through the windows. "Good morning," she said shyly. "Something smells wonderful. Morning. I hope you slept well." Isaac tried not to stare but found it nearly impossible. Even fresh from sleep, she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Better than I have in weeks, actually. That bed was heavenly. She moved closer to the stove, drawn by the warmth and the cooking smells. "Can I help with anything? Just sit yourself down at the table. You are a guest." He plated the food and poured 2 cups of coffee, bringing everything to the small wooden table. "It is not fancy, but it will stick to your ribs." They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before Delilah spoke. "Tell me about yourself, Isaac Keller. How did you come to live here?" Isaac sipped his coffee, considering. "My parents homesteaded this land 20 years ago when I was 6. They built this cabin and worked hard to make a life here. My father bred horses, good strong animals for ranching and traveling. I learned the trade from him. When the fever took them both 3 years back, I kept up the business. It is a simple life, but it is mine. I am sorry about your parents. That must have been difficult." "It was, but I take comfort knowing they built something lasting here." He met her eyes across the table. "What about you? Tell me about your family." Delilah's expression grew complicated. "My father is a banker in St. Louis. We were never close. He saw me as another asset to be managed and traded. My mother died when I was 15, and after that, home became just a place I existed until I could escape. My sister Catherine is the only one I will truly miss. She is 16 and full of fire. I hope she finds a way to live life on her own terms. She has a good example in her older sister," Isaac said softly. Delilah's cheeks colored. "I am not sure running away in the night counts as a good example. It takes courage to choose your own path, especially for a woman. Do not diminish what you have done." Their eyes held and something passed between them, an understanding that went beyond words. Delilah felt her heart rate quicken. This was dangerous territory. She could not afford to develop feelings for this man, no matter how kind he was, no matter how his gaze made her feel seen and valued for the first time in her life. She had to reach California, had to start over where no one would find her. "We should look for my bag," she said, breaking the moment. Isaac nodded, though he felt the loss of connection keenly. "I will saddle a horse. The dress you wore last night is still wet, but I have some extra trousers and a shirt you can borrow. They will be too big, but we can cinch them up." 20 minutes later, Delilah found herself dressed in men's clothing for the first time in her life. The trousers felt strange but liberating, allowing her to move freely in ways her skirts never had. Isaac had found a length of rope to use as a belt, and she had rolled the sleeves and pant legs to keep from tripping. She caught him looking at her with an expression she could not quite read as she emerged from the back room. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing. It is just different. Good different." He cleared his throat and looked away. "The horse is ready." He had saddled his gentlest mare, a pretty bay named Rosie. When Delilah admitted she had only ridden a handful of times, Isaac made a quick decision. "You will ride with me then. Safer that way." He mounted his larger gelding, a gray called Smoke, and extended his hand down to her. Delilah hesitated only a moment before taking it and allowing him to pull her up behind him. She had to wrap her arms around his waist to stay secure, and the intimacy of the position made her breath catch. She could feel the solid warmth of his body against hers, smell the clean scent of soap and leather that clung to him. Isaac felt every point of contact between them like a brand. Her arms around him, her body pressed against his back, it took all his concentration to focus on guiding Smoke down the muddy road toward town. "Hold tight," he said, his voice rougher than he intended. They retraced the path Delilah had taken the night before, scanning the roadside and ditches for any sign of her bag. The storm had left branches and debris scattered everywhere, making the search difficult. They were nearly halfway to town when Delilah suddenly cried out, "There, by those rocks." Isaac pulled Smoke to a halt and followed her pointing finger. A brown leather bag sat wedged between two large stones, partially covered in mud but intact. He dismounted and retrieved it, brushing off the worst of the dirt before handing it up to Delilah. She clutched it to her chest, relief flooding through her. "I cannot believe it is still here. Check if everything is inside." Delilah opened the bag and rummaged through the contents. Her extra dress was there, along with undergarments, a small New Testament her mother had given her, and at the bottom, wrapped carefully in cloth, her mother's locket. But when she searched for her money, her heart sank. The small purse that had held her savings was gone. "The money is not here," she said, trying to keep the despair from her voice. "I had nearly $50. It must have fallen out somewhere along the road." Isaac's jaw tightened. $50 was a considerable sum, and without it, Delilah would have no means to continue her journey. "We will keep looking." They searched for another hour, going back and forth along the road, but found nothing. The money could have blown away in the storm, been buried in mud, or even found by someone else. Eventually, Isaac had to accept that it was gone. "I am sorry," he said, guiding Smoke back toward his cabin. "I wish we could have found it." Delilah fought back tears. "It is not your fault. I should have been more careful." She had no idea what to do now. She could not continue to California without funds, but she could not stay in Trinidad indefinitely either. If her father was looking for her, he would eventually think to check towns along the westward routes. As if reading her thoughts, Isaac spoke. "You can stay with me while you figure out your next steps. I could use help around the place if you are willing to work. I can pay a small wage, nothing much, but it would help you save up again." "I could not ask that of you." "You are not asking. I am offering." He turned his head slightly, catching her eye. "Please, Delilah, let me help you." The sincerity in his voice undid her. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. "Why are you being so kind to me? You do not even know me." Isaac was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words came from a place of raw honesty he had not known he possessed. "I feel like I do know you. I know that sounds crazy given we only met last night, but when I opened that door and saw your eyes, something in me just knew you were important, knew I had to help you. Knew I wanted you in my life, even if only for a little while." He paused. "Maybe I am the crazy one." "You are not crazy," Delilah whispered. "I felt it too." They rode the rest of the way in charged silence, both of them acutely aware that something significant had shifted between them. By the time they reached the cabin, an unspoken agreement hung in the air. Delilah would stay, at least for now. They would see where this strange and powerful connection led them. Over the following days, they fell into an easy rhythm. Delilah proved to be a hard worker, taking over the cooking and cleaning without complaint, and even helping Isaac with the horses. She had a natural way with the animals, moving calmly among them and speaking in low, soothing tones that made them trust her. Isaac found himself looking for excuses to be near her, to hear her laugh, to catch her eye across the dinner table. They talked for hours in the evenings, sharing stories from their pasts and dreams for their futures. Delilah spoke of her desire to live freely, to make her own choices, perhaps to open a small shop someday where she could support herself. Isaac listened, fascinated by her ambition and courage. He shared his hopes of expanding the horse breeding business, of building a real ranch that could support a family. "A family?" Delilah asked one night as they sat by the fire. "You want children, someday, with the right woman. 2 or 3 kids running around, learning to ride, helping with the chores, a house full of life and laughter." He looked at her, his gaze intense. "What about you? Do you want children?" I never let myself think that far ahead. Marriage always seemed like a trap, a way to lose myself. But the way you describe it, it sounds different, like a partnership instead of a prison. That is what it should be. Two people choosing each other every day, building something together. He reached across the space between their chairs and took her hand. I know we have not known each other long, but I need you to know I am falling in love with you, Delilah Richardson. Maybe I fell that first night. Maybe it is happening gradually. But it is happening, and I cannot pretend otherwise. Delilah's breath caught. She had been trying to guard her heart, to remind herself that this situation was temporary, but the truth was she had been falling too. Falling hard and fast for this gentle, honest cowboy who saw her not as property or a burden but as a person worthy of respect and care. I am falling in love with you too, she admitted, her voice trembling. It terrifies me. Why? Because my father might find me, because I have nothing to offer you, because this feels too good to be real and I keep waiting for something to go wrong. Isaac stood and pulled her to her feet, wrapping his arms around her. Nothing is going to go wrong. I will not let anything happen to you. And you have everything to offer: your strength, your kindness, your spirit. That is more valuable than any dowry. She looked up at him, and the tenderness in his expression broke down her last defenses. When he lowered his head and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise, Delilah felt something inside her finally come home. She kissed him back, pouring all her hope and fear and love into that single perfect moment. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Isaac rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me, not as a temporary guest, but as mine. Marry me, Delilah. We barely know each other, she protested weakly, but her heart was singing. Then we will spend the rest of our lives learning. Say yes. Choose me, choose this life, choose us. Delilah thought of all the reasons she should refuse. The short time they had known each other, the risk of her father finding her, the uncertainty of frontier life. But then she thought of how she felt in Isaac's arms, how he made her laugh, how he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. She thought of waking up beside him every morning, working side by side during the day, falling asleep in his embrace every night. The vision was so vivid, so right, that she could not imagine any other future. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. Isaac's whoop of joy echoed through the cabin. He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing like children. When he set her down, he kissed her again, longer this time, deeper, until they were both dizzy with want and love. Tomorrow, Isaac said. We will go to town tomorrow and find a preacher. I do not want to wait. Tomorrow, Delilah agreed, feeling reckless and wonderfully alive. But tomorrow brought a complication neither had anticipated. They were preparing to ride into Trinidad when a horse and rider appeared on the road approaching the cabin. As the figure drew closer, Isaac's expression hardened. Delilah followed his gaze and felt her blood run cold. The rider was a man in his early 50s, well dressed in a fine suit despite the dust of travel. His face was hard, with cold eyes and a thin, cruel mouth. Behind him rode two other men, clearly hired guns based on the weapons they carried and the way they surveyed the surroundings with predatory awareness. Get inside, Isaac said quietly. No. I know who that is, Gerald Thornton. My father must have told him where I was headed. Isaac's hand went to the rifle he had grabbed from inside the cabin when he spotted the approaching men. Then he can turn around and ride back where he came from. You are not his to claim. The three men reined their horses to a stop 20 feet from where Isaac and Delilah stood on the porch. Thornton's eyes fixed on Delilah with a possessiveness that made her skin crawl. Miss Richardson, he said, his voice smooth and cold as a snake. Your father has been beside himself with worry. I have come to escort you home. I am not going anywhere with you, Delilah said, proud that her voice remained steady. I do not want to marry you, and I am not returning to St. Louis. Thornton's expression hardened. Your father and I have an agreement. You will honor it, or he will face significant financial consequences that will ruin him. My father made that agreement without my consent. It is not binding. That is not how these matters work, my dear. Thornton dismounted, and his hired men did the same, their hands resting casually on their gun belts. Now, be reasonable. Come along quietly, and we can forget this unfortunate incident. Isaac stepped forward, placing himself between Delilah and Thornton. The lady said no. That is the end of the discussion. You and your men need to leave. Thornton's eyes narrowed as he really looked at Isaac for the first time. And who are you? The cowboy playing white knight. I am Isaac Keller, and this is my land. You are trespassing. Isaac Keller. Thornton rolled the name over his tongue mockingly. Did Miss Richardson tell you she is promised to me, that her father accepted a considerable sum for her hand? Did Miss Richardson tell you she is marrying me instead? Isaac countered. We were heading into town this very morning to see the preacher. Surprise flickered across Thornton's face, followed quickly by rage. You lying little, he started toward Delilah, but Isaac grabbed him by the shoulder and spun him back. Touch her and I will break your arm, Isaac said, his voice deadly calm. One of the hired guns drew his pistol halfway, but Thornton held up a hand to stop him. Put it away, Sims. This can still be resolved civilly. He straightened his jacket and regarded Isaac with calculation. Mr. Keller, perhaps we can make a deal. I am a reasonable businessman. Name your price for walking away. $500. 1,000. Delilah felt sick at hearing herself discussed like livestock, but Isaac just laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. You think my feelings are for sale. You are as stupid as you are cruel. There is no amount of money in the world that would make me give up Delilah. Then you are a fool. Sims, Parker, take the girl. The two hired men moved forward, but Isaac was faster. He raised his rifle, aiming it directly at Thornton's chest. One more step and your boss has a hole in him. Your choice. The men froze. Sims, a grizzled man with a scar across his jaw, studied Isaac carefully. Boss, this cowboy is serious. Might be we should reconsider. I am not leaving without her, Thornton insisted, but fear had crept into his voice. Then I guess you are dying here, Isaac said flatly, because she is not going anywhere with you. A tense silence stretched out, broken only by the nervous stamping of the horses. Delilah could feel her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone must hear it. Then a new voice called out from the road. Everything all right here, Isaac? A man rode into view, wearing a sheriff's badge on his vest. He was older than Isaac, perhaps 40, with graying hair and sharp eyes that took in the scene immediately. Two more men rode behind him, both armed. Sheriff Dawson, Isaac said, relief evident in his voice though he kept his rifle trained on Thornton. Good timing. These men were just threatening Miss Richardson here. Dawson dismounted and walked his horse forward, his deputies spreading out to flank Thornton's men. That's so. Mr. Thornton, is it? I heard in town you were looking for a young lady, asking a lot of questions, making people nervous. This is a private matter, Sheriff. Miss Richardson is my fiancée and I am taking her home. She does not look like she wants to go, Dawson observed. Miss, do you want to leave with this man? Absolutely not, Delilah said firmly. I ran away to escape marrying him. He is here against my will, Dawson nodded. Well then, seems pretty clear-cut. Mr. Thornton, you and your men need to ride out. Now. You cannot do this. Her father is not here, and this is my territory. The lady has made her wishes known. If you persist, I will arrest you for harassment and threatening behavior. Dawson's hand rested on his own gun. "Do not test me on this." Thornton's face turned an ugly shade of red. He looked at Delilah with pure venom. "You will regret this. Your father will be ruined, and it will be your fault." "My father made his own choices," Delilah said, her voice stronger now. "I am making mine." With a final furious glare, Thornton remounted his horse. "This is not over." "Yeah, it is," Dawson said. "And if I see you in Trinidad again, you will spend a night in my jail. Clear." Thornton yanked his horse's head around and spurred it into a gallop back toward town. His men followed, though Sims gave Isaac an almost respectful nod before riding off. As soon as they were out of sight, Delilah's legs gave out. Isaac dropped the rifle and caught her, holding her close as she shook with reaction. "It is all right. They are gone. You are safe." Sheriff Dawson cleared his throat. "Isaac, want to tell me what is going on?" Over cups of coffee inside the cabin, Isaac and Delilah explained the situation. Dawson listened carefully, asking occasional questions. When they finished, he sat back and regarded them both. "Well, that is quite a tale. For what it is worth, I believe you, Miss Richardson, and legally, you are an adult woman. You cannot be forced into a marriage against your will, no matter what agreements your father made." He looked at Isaac. "You serious about marrying this girl? More serious than I have been about anything in my life." "Good, because you have made yourself an enemy today." Men like Thornton do not forget perceived slights. He might send others, or he might try legal means to cause trouble. "Let him try," Isaac said grimly. "Delilah is mine to protect now." Dawson smiled slightly. "When is the wedding?" "Today, if possible," Delilah said. "The sooner we are married, the harder it will be for anyone to challenge it. Reverend Matthews can perform the ceremony this afternoon. I will stand as witness if you like. Make it official." Dawson stood. "But do it soon. And Isaac, keep that rifle handy for a while." After the sheriff left, Isaac pulled Delilah into his arms. "Are you all right?" "I think so." "I was so frightened, Isaac. If you had not been here, if the sheriff had not arrived, do not think about that. It did not happen, and it will not happen. You are going to be my wife, and I protect what is mine." He tilted her chin up and kissed her softly. "Ready to get married?" Delilah managed a shaky laugh. "I never imagined my wedding day would include gunmen and death threats." "Is that a no?" "No, it is a yes. Always yes." She kissed him back, feeling the fear recede in the warmth of his embrace. "Let me change into my better dress at least. A girl should look nice for her wedding, even if it is rushed." An hour later, they stood in the small church in Trinidad with Sheriff Dawson and his wife as witnesses. Delilah wore her Sunday dress, a simple blue cotton that brought out the gold flecks in her eyes. Isaac had put on his best shirt and vest, his hair neatly combed. Reverend Matthews, a kind-faced man in his 60s, smiled at them as they joined hands before him. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the sight of God to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." The familiar words rolled over them like a blessing. "Isaac Keller, do you take Delilah Richardson to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part?" Isaac looked into Delilah's eyes, seeing his future there, seeing home. "I do." "Delilah Richardson, you take Isaac Keller to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part." Delilah's voice rang out clear and certain. "I do." "Then, by the power vested in me by the territory of Colorado and the grace of God, I pronounce you husband and wife. Isaac, you may kiss your bride." Isaac cupped Delilah's face in his hands and kissed her with all the love and promise he felt in his heart. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her arms wrapping around his neck. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling through tears. The Dawsons congratulated them heartily, and the sheriff insisted on buying them dinner at the town's hotel restaurant. A wedding needs celebrating, even one conducted under unusual circumstances. The rest of the day passed in a happy blur. They ate a fine meal, accepted well wishes from townspeople who knew Isaac, and by evening rode back to the cabin as husband and wife. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, and Delilah rested her head against Isaac's back, feeling more content than she had ever thought possible. That night, as they lay in Isaac's bed, their bed now wrapped in each other's arms after consummating their marriage, Delilah traced patterns on Isaac's chest and marveled at how much her life had changed in such a short time. "You think Thornton will really cause trouble?" she asked quietly. Isaac tightened his arms around her. "Maybe, but we will face it together. You are not alone anymore, Delilah. You have me, and I will never let anyone hurt you or take you away. I never believed in love at first sight before I met you. I thought it was something from novels, not real life." "What changed your mind?" She shifted to look up at him, her eyes soft in the moonlight streaming through the window. "You. The way you looked at me that first night like I was something precious. The way you have treated me every day since with such respect and care. The way my heart feels when I am with you, like it has finally found where it belongs." Isaac kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. "I feel the same way. I spent years thinking I was content alone, that I did not need anyone, but I was just waiting for you." "Tell me something," Delilah said. "What did you see in my eyes that first night? You said you saw my eyes and fell hard. What was it?" Isaac considered the question carefully, wanting to give her an honest answer. "I saw strength, even though you were at your weakest moment. I saw courage because you had come so far alone. But mostly I saw something that spoke directly to my soul. Recognition, maybe. A sense that you were the missing piece I did not know I was looking for. Does that sound foolish? No, it sounds perfect." She snuggled closer, letting her eyes drift closed. "Thank you for saving me, Isaac. Not just from the storm, but from the life I was running from. You gave me a future I can actually look forward to. Thank you for knocking on my door. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for saying yes." He held her close as she fell asleep, and for the first time in years, Isaac Keller felt completely happy. The weeks that followed were some of the best of both their lives. They worked together during the day, training horses, maintaining the property, and preparing for winter. Isaac taught Delilah to ride properly, and she proved to be a natural horsewoman, fearless and intuitive with the animals. In the evenings, they would cook together, share stories, and make love with an intensity that left them both breathless and amazed. News of their marriage spread through Trinidad quickly. Some of the townspeople were curious about the mysterious bride Isaac had acquired so suddenly, but most were simply happy for him. He had always been well-liked, known as an honest, hard-working man, and people welcomed Delilah warmly once they met her. Mrs. Dawson, the sheriff's wife, took Delilah under her wing, introducing her to the other women in town and helping her navigate the social landscape of frontier life. Delilah found herself making friends, putting down roots in a way she never had in St. Louis. Here, she was not William Richardson's daughter or Gerald Thornton's intended bride. She was simply Delilah Keller, and that identity felt like freedom. A month after the wedding, a letter arrived from St. Louis. Delilah recognized her sister Catherine's handwriting immediately and tore it open with eager hands. "Dearest Delilah," it read, "I hope this letter finds you well and happy. I bribed a servant to tell me where you went, and I am so relieved you made it safely to Colorado. Father was furious when he discovered you missing, especially after Mr. Thornton came demanding answers. Father told him you were heading to California, thinking he would catch you on the road. I am glad you stopped in Trinidad, even if it was not your intention. Father and Mr. Thornton had a terrible row when Thornton returned without you. Their business deal fell apart, and Father lost a considerable sum of money. He blames you, but honestly, Delilah, I am proud of you for choosing yourself. Father has been talking about sending me to live with Aunt Margaret in Boston, saying he cannot trust me not to run off too. I do not think he will, though. He needs me here to keep up appearances. I miss you terribly, but am so happy you are free. Please write back and tell me everything. All my love, Catherine. Delilah read the letter twice, emotions warring inside her. Guilt over the trouble she had caused her father. Anger that he had sent Thornton after her knowing she did not want the marriage. Relief that Catherine seemed all right, and fierce joy at her sister's pride in her actions. Bad news? Isaac asked, reading her troubled expression. She handed him the letter. After he read it, he pulled her into his arms. You are not responsible for your father's financial troubles. He made those business deals himself. I know, but I still feel guilty. What if he really is ruined? Then he will have to find a way forward, same as everyone else who faces hardship. You cannot sacrifice your happiness for his greed, Delilah. Isaac kissed the top of her head. Write back to your sister. Tell her about us, about the life we are building here. She deserves to know you are happy. Delilah did write back. A long letter detailing her marriage to Isaac, their home, the horses, and her new friends in Trinidad. She painted a picture of contentment and love, hoping Catherine would read between the lines and know she had made the right choice. She also invited her sister to visit if she ever wanted or needed to get away from St. Louis, an open door to safety if one became necessary. As November arrived and the weather turned cold, Isaac and Delilah settled into the rhythms of married life. They discovered each other's quirks and habits, learned to read each other's moods, and built the kind of partnership Isaac had described that first night. Delilah proved to be excellent with the business side of the horse breeding operation, keeping meticulous records and negotiating sales with the ranchers who came to buy stock. Isaac marveled at her head for numbers and her confidence in dealing with men who initially tried to dismiss her. One particularly memorable afternoon, a rancher named Tom Haskins tried to cheat them on a price, assuming Delilah did not know the value of horseflesh. She calmly informed him of the fair market rate, cited examples of recent sales, and refused to budge on her asking price. When Haskins tried to appeal to Isaac over her head, Isaac simply smiled and said, "My wife handles the business. If you want the horses, you will pay what she asks." Haskins left grumbling but returned 2 days later with the full payment, and he never questioned Delilah's authority again. Word spread that Isaac Keller's wife was as sharp as she was pretty, and soon people were coming to them specifically because of Delilah's fair dealing and good judgment. December brought snow and the hardest cold of winter. Isaac and Delilah spent long evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other, playing cards and talking about the future. It was during one of these evenings that Delilah realized she had not had her monthly courses in 2 months. At first, she attributed it to stress and the dramatic changes in her life. But when a 3rd month passed with no sign of bleeding, she began to suspect the truth. She waited until she was certain before telling Isaac. On a frigid evening with snow falling softly outside, she took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "I think we are going to have a baby." Isaac's eyes went wide. "Truly, I am almost certain. I have missed 3 courses and I have been feeling queasy in the mornings." Pure joy transformed his face. He dropped to his knees before her chair and pressed his face against her belly. "A baby, our baby." Delilah ran her fingers through his hair, tears streaming down her face. "Are you happy?" Happy does not begin to cover it. He looked up at her, his own eyes wet. "You have given me everything, Delilah. A home, a partnership, and now a child. I do not have words for how much I love you." "I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes." They spent the rest of the evening making plans, talking about names and what room they would convert into a nursery. Isaac was adamant about building a proper cradle, and Delilah wanted to sew quilts and clothing. The baby became a focal point for all their hopes and dreams. As winter deepened, and Delilah's belly began to swell with new life, they faced one final challenge from the past. In early February, a lawyer arrived from St. Louis with papers stating that William Richardson was attempting to have Delilah's marriage annulled on grounds that she was of unsound mind when she married, and that he, as her father, had not given consent. Sheriff Dawson brought the lawyer to the Keller cabin, making it clear through his presence that the law was on Delilah and Isaac's side. The lawyer, a thin, nervous man named Chambers, seemed uncomfortable with his assignment. "Mr. Chambers," Delilah said calmly, her hand resting protectively on her pregnant belly, "you may tell my father that I was perfectly sound of mind when I married Isaac. I am also carrying his child, which makes any attempt at annulment both futile and absurd. I chose this life freely, and I will not be returning to St. Louis under any circumstances." "Your father was quite insistent," Chambers began. "My father does not control my life anymore," Delilah interrupted. "I am a married woman in a legal union. Colorado law recognizes that. Furthermore, any continued harassment from my father or Gerald Thornton will be met with legal action on our part. Sheriff Dawson has documented everything that has transpired." "The lady is right," Dawson added. "The marriage is legal and binding. No judge in this territory will annul it, especially given Mrs. Keller's condition. Tell Richardson he is wasting his time and money." Chambers left shortly after, and they never heard from him or anyone connected to Delilah's old life again. It seemed William Richardson had finally accepted that his daughter was beyond his reach. Spring came in a rush of melting snow and new growth. Delilah's pregnancy progressed smoothly, and by May, she was large and uncomfortable but glowing with health. Isaac hovered over her constantly, worrying about every twinge and ache, until Delilah finally had to tell him to stop fussing, or she would make him sleep in the barn. Mrs. Dawson had arranged for a midwife from Trinidad to attend the birth, a capable woman named Ruth who had delivered half the babies in the area. When Delilah's labor began on a warm evening in late May, Ruth arrived quickly and took charge with calm efficiency. Isaac paced outside for hours, listening to Delilah's cries and feeling helpless. When Mrs. Dawson emerged and told him he had a healthy son, he nearly collapsed with relief. She led him inside to where Delilah lay exhausted but radiant, holding a red-faced, squalling infant. "Meet your son," Delilah said, her voice hoarse but happy. Isaac approached slowly, awe written on every feature. When he took the baby from Delilah, something fundamental shifted in his heart. This tiny, perfect person was his. Part of him, part of Delilah, a future they had created together. "Hello, little man," he whispered. "I am your father, and I promise I will take care of you and your mother for as long as I live." "What should we name him?" Delilah asked. They had discussed names for months, debating options and meanings. Now, looking at their son's scrunched face and dark hair, Isaac knew exactly what fit: James. James William Keller. Giving the boy William as a middle name was Delilah's idea, a small gesture toward her father despite everything, acknowledging her roots even as she built a new family. Delilah nodded, touching the baby's tiny fist. James, it is perfect. The months that followed were exhausting and wonderful. James was a healthy, hungry baby who kept them up at all hours, but neither Isaac nor Delilah minded. They took turns walking him when he cried, marveled at every small milestone, and fell even more deeply in love as they navigated parenthood together. The horse business continued to thrive, and by the time James turned one, Isaac and Delilah had saved enough money to expand the barn and add another room to the cabin. They talked about having more children, about building a real legacy for their family. On the first anniversary of the night Delilah had knocked on Isaac's door, they left James with Mrs. Dawson and had a quiet evening alone in their cabin. Isaac had cooked Delilah's favorite meal, and they sat together by the fire, much as they had that first night. "Can you believe it has only been a year?" Delilah said, leaning against Isaac's shoulder. "It feels like I have known you forever." "Best year of my life," Isaac said simply. "You walked into my life soaked and desperate, and you gave me everything I never knew I needed. You saved me. Not just from the storm, but from a life that would have killed my spirit. You saw me, really saw me, when no one else ever had." She turned to kiss him. "I love you, Isaac Keller. Thank you for opening your door that night. Thank you for knocking." He pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair. "Here is to 50 more years together." "At least," Delilah agreed, and they sealed the promise with a kiss. 2 more children followed James over the next 5 years. First came a daughter they named Sarah Rose, with her mother's dark hair and her father's blue eyes. Then another son, Matthew Isaac, who was the image of his father but had his mother's temperament. The horse ranch grew into one of the most successful in southern Colorado. Isaac's breeding program produced animals that were prized throughout the territory, and Delilah's business acumen ensured they got fair prices and built strong relationships with their customers. They hired ranch hands to help with the work as the operation expanded, and eventually they built a larger house with enough room for their growing family. Catherine came to visit when James was 3, staying for several months and falling in love with the freedom and opportunity the West offered. She eventually moved to Denver, where she opened a successful dress shop, and she visited Trinidad regularly, becoming a beloved aunt to Isaac and Delilah's children. Sheriff Dawson and his wife became like family, standing as godparents for all 3 children and sharing countless meals and celebrations. The community that had welcomed Delilah so warmly continued to embrace the Kellers as they became pillars of Trinidad society. Through it all, the love between Isaac and Delilah only deepened. They had their arguments, of course, and the stresses of running a business and raising children tested them at times. But they never forgot that first connection, that moment when their eyes met and something eternal sparked to life. On difficult days, one would reach for the other's hand, and the simple touch would be enough to remind them why they had chosen each other. As the years passed and their children grew, Isaac and Delilah would sometimes sit on their porch in the evening, watching the sun set over the Colorado landscape they both loved. James would be in the corral, working with the horses with natural skill. Sarah would be reading under a tree, brilliant and curious about everything. Matthew would be helping the ranch hands, eager to be wherever the action was. "We did good," Isaac would say, surveying the life they had built. "We did very good," Delilah would agree, squeezing his hand. When James turned 18, he announced his intention to expand the family business into Wyoming, where he had heard good things about the horse market. Isaac and Delilah gave him their blessing and enough money to get started, proud of the man their son had become. He rode north in the spring of 1897, promising to write often and return for visits. Sarah, at 16, had attracted the attention of a young lawyer who had recently opened a practice in Trinidad. Isaac was not entirely happy about it, thinking his daughter too young for serious courtship, but Delilah reminded him that she had been only 20 when they married. After making it clear to the lawyer that Sarah's education and aspirations were paramount, and that any relationship needed to support rather than hinder her dreams, Isaac grudgingly accepted the young man's presence. Matthew, at 13, was already showing signs of his father's skill with horses and his mother's head for business. He talked constantly about the future of the ranch, full of ideas and energy. On a summer evening in 1900, Isaac and Delilah celebrated their 22nd wedding anniversary alone, with the children staying in town with friends. They sat on the porch, now a fine structure with comfortable chairs and a view of their land. 22 years, Isaac mused. Sometimes it feels like yesterday you knocked on my door. Do you remember what you thought when you first saw me? I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Still do. He reached over and took her hand, his thumb tracing over the wedding band he had bought her 10 years ago when they could finally afford gold instead of simple silver. I thought I saw my future in your eyes. You did. I saw mine in yours too, though I was too frightened to admit it at first. Delilah smiled, remembering the girl she had been, desperate and alone. I was running from everything when I found you. I did not realize I was running toward my real life. No regrets, not a single one. Isaac pulled her close, kissing her temple. My only regret is that I did not have more years with you before that night. But we have the rest of our lives together, and I intend to make every moment count. The years continued to flow by like water in a stream. James married a woman he met in Wyoming and gave Isaac and Delilah their first grandchildren, twin boys born in 1902. Sarah married her lawyer after all, but on her terms, making him agree that she would continue her involvement in the ranch business and that any decisions about their life would be made jointly. They settled in Trinidad, and Sarah became as much a part of the ranch's success as her parents. Matthew took over more and more of the day-to-day operations as Isaac aged, allowing Isaac and Delilah to slow down a bit and enjoy their grandchildren. By 1910, they had 7 grandchildren between their 3 children, and the Keller name was respected throughout Colorado. On a cold December evening in 1915, as snow fell softly outside and a fire crackled in the hearth of their comfortable home, Isaac and Delilah sat together wrapped in a quilt, watching their grandchildren play. Sarah's oldest, a girl of 10, was reading to the younger children. Matthew's son was building something with blocks. The noise and chaos filled the house with life and love. "Do you remember what you said that first night?" Delilah asked quietly, her head resting on Isaac's shoulder. "About wanting a house full of life and laughter." "I remember everything about that night. Why? Look around. You got your wish. We got our wish." Isaac surveyed the scene before them, his heart swelling with gratitude. "We got more than I ever dared to hope for." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "I love you, Delilah Keller. Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely cowboy." "I love you too, Isaac. Thank you for seeing me that night, really seeing me, and choosing to help a desperate woman instead of turning her away. I could never have turned you away. From the moment I saw your eyes, I was yours." "And I was yours," Delilah whispered. "Always." The fire burned low as the evening wore on, and eventually the grandchildren were bundled up and sent home with their parents. Isaac and Delilah retired to their bedroom, the same room where they had spent their wedding night all those years ago, now filled with memories and the comfortable familiarity of decades together. As they lay in bed, Isaac traced the lines of Delilah's face, the small wrinkles that had appeared over the years, the silver threads in her dark hair. To him, she was still as beautiful as the night she appeared on his doorstep. "What are you thinking?" Delilah asked, catching his hand and kissing his palm. "That I would do it all again. Every moment, every challenge, every joy. I would choose you every single time." "Good," she said, snuggling closer, "because you are stuck with me for whatever time we have left. Not nearly long enough, but I will take whatever I can get." He wrapped his arms around her, and they fell asleep as they had for 37 years together. The seasons continued their eternal cycle. Isaac and Delilah grew older, moving a bit slower, but their love remained as strong as ever. They spent their days on the porch of the ranch house, watching Matthew and his family run the business they had built, visiting with Sarah and her children, and reading letters from James, who had built his own successful operation in Wyoming and rarely made it down to Colorado but wrote faithfully. In the spring of 1920, Isaac fell ill with pneumonia. Despite Delilah's constant care and the doctor's best efforts, he weakened quickly. On a sunny May morning, with Delilah holding his hand and their children gathered around the bed, Isaac Keller took his last breath, leaving behind a legacy of love, hard work, and family. Delilah was devastated. For 42 years, Isaac had been her partner, her love, her home. The world felt impossibly empty without him. But she found comfort in their children and grandchildren, in the ranch that still thrived, in the town they had helped build. She stayed in the house Isaac had built for her, surrounded by memories of their life together. She lived another 8 years, long enough to see great-grandchildren born and to know that everything she and Isaac had created would endure. When she finally passed peacefully in her sleep, in January of 1928, just shy of her 70th birthday, she was buried next to Isaac in the Trinidad cemetery, their headstones side by side under a cottonwood tree. Their story became a legend in Trinidad, passed down through generations of Kellers and told to wide-eyed children. The tale of how a desperate woman knocked on a cowboy's door during a storm, how he took one look into her eyes and fell hard, and how that single moment of connection built a legacy that lasted. The Keller Ranch continued to operate into the 21st century, still raising horses, still bearing the name of the couple who started it all. And sometimes, on stormy nights when rain lashed the windows and thunder rolled across the Colorado sky, people swore they could see two figures on the porch of the old Keller house. A tall man and a dark-haired woman standing close together, their love still evident even in silhouette. Whether it was memory, ghost, or simply the enduring power of true love, no one could say for certain. But everyone agreed that Isaac and Delilah Keller had found something rare and precious that night in 1878, a love that truly did last forever. Their great-great-grandchildren still told the story at family reunions, still showed visitors the cabin where Isaac first opened the door to find Delilah on his porch. The original structure had been preserved and stood as a monument to the beginning of it all. Inside, carefully maintained, was the very room where Delilah had slept that first night, the fireplace where Isaac had warmed her back to life, and on the mantel, a photograph taken on their 40th anniversary. In it, an older Isaac and Delilah sat side by side, his arm around her shoulders, both smiling at the camera with the easy happiness of people who had built a good life together. The photograph captured what everyone who knew them had seen: two souls who had recognized each other instantly and never let go, who had turned a chance meeting in a storm into a love story for the ages. It was a reminder that sometimes, when you least expect it, when you are running from your past and uncertain of your future, Fate puts exactly the right person in your path. All you have to do is be brave enough to knock on the door. And if you are very lucky, the person who answers will look at you with eyes that see straight through to your soul. And in that moment, both of your lives will change forever. That is what happened to Isaac Keller and Delilah Richardson on a stormy October night in Trinidad, Colorado in 1878. He opened the door. She looked into his eyes. He fell hard. And together they built something beautiful that lasted long after they were gone, a testament to the enduring power of love, choice, and two hearts brave enough to choose each other against all odds.